about what it is. So Prefect, it's in the class of things. It's called an orchestrator. And what that means is like it's supposed to be a tool that ties together, that ties, not that, ties together different parts of your tech stack, different parts of the tech stack. For example, you know, you could think, well, we have like a Python script. Actually, let's clear that. Let's say, you know, we have like an API, right? And then what we want to do is, you know, have a Python script that then calls the API and then, you know, loads that data right into our database. Or it could be into the database. Oftentimes, actually, like it's a CSV file, and then what you'll do is take the CSV file and load that into a database. Okay, so this will be, you know, like some ETL.py, or, you know, could be anything. But in order to tie this together, what you'll use is kind of like an orchestrator. And what the orchestrator will do, so this could be Prefect, it could be Airflow, it could be Dagster. They're all variations of the same thing. Okay? And this tool will like call basically your Python script to then load data into or like into CSV, and then pull the data from the CSV file into a database. Now we can do, and basically what you'll see is like Prefect is designed to feel just like Python. Like 90% of it is just Python. Like 99% of it probably is just Python. Some things that it gives you that makes things like why even use Prefect in the first place, right? Like we obviously know how to write Python code that hits the API, writes to a CSV, and then loads into a database. So like, why do we even need this thing? Scheduling is a big one. You know, if we want something to like run every day or every, you know, month or every, you know, hour or something like that, right? Like let's say, you know, remember that drink receipts API, the Texas drink receipts, right? That gets updated every month with new information about restaurant sales. So we don't want to kind of like log in every month to do this. We want this just to work, because you can imagine there's many different APIs we need to hit every month. So we don't want to spend a day just like running all these scripts. Other things that it can do, once you do scheduling, well, you have problems where, you know, this is happening in the background, right? It's kind of happening without you knowing it. So now this leads to problems, meaning you have to be able to monitor this, and you need to sometimes like alert if it breaks. Or another thing is like retry. You know, like let's say the API, the website's down. You might want something that tries it again in either a day or a minute or just like, you know, 10 seconds to try to make this more fault tolerant, like that it will work, more likely to work. So, you know, once you kind of have scheduling, then having things like this, right, are good. The other thing you can do with Prefect, which is a little fancy, but you know, is like if this thing breaks, try something else. You know, if and you can do that. You can say like, all right, if this task succeeds, then keep going. But if not, you can try something else. Right? And so it does these components are I guess like a pretty big selling point of an orchestrator. Okay. So like I said, you need something where we can monitor it. And it's not just you who's monitoring it, but like your team, right? You can go back in time and look to see exactly where this thing broke. Something that like can alert you, like either through like a Slack message, or some of them will hook into like a text message or an email, right? Something that can retry a certain procedure if it breaks, try it again, help you to debug it by logging it, and then like we said, kind of like if the task doesn't work, try something else. Maybe go to a secondary API or something like that. So how do we do this? Like I said, it's basically just Python. Sorry, it might feel. Let's get started with the project. So what I have is, I have my requirements.txt file. I'm just going to go through the setup because it's been a little while since we've done it. And what we'll need to do, remember, is we should probably Python 3 create an environment. So do Python 3-m venv. So we're using the venv module to create like a environment, a virtual environment. And that will create, oh, I already have venv. It's all right. I think it should be fine. So creating that, and then I'm going to pip3 install -r requirements.txt. Right, so this will install all the libraries in this file. Okay. And the libraries I'm using are Prefect, the requests library to make a request, and pandas. And that's basically it. And then when this finishes, you can see that this is my code base. It starts here, okay? Get and write data, passing through a name. This is the name of a restaurant, and that will call the find receipts method. This is basically my client, okay? So this is going to make a request to this URL, passing through the name, right? Which was right here. So it's passing through this name, going to make a request, and then get back a response. From there, right, we call the find receipts, then we'll write to this file. I already have this in here. Let's just delete this so you can see it's new. All right, and then let's just check. Has this? I think we're fine. At this point, there is no prefect in here. I'm not using it. I can remove this if I want. This is just purely Python. Then I can do Python 3 and run this function, which will make a request, get back the JSON, write it to a CSV. So you can notice what's happening. I'm taking through the list of dictionaries, creating a data frame out of it, simply by doing, just literally pass it into pd.dataframe, and then df.toCSV will write it to the data folder, receipts.csv. So if I run this now, Python 3 index.py, it's going to show me some warning. I don't know. This just started happening today. Yeah, this is just a warning, but it did work. Okay? If you don't believe me, you can see that now we have this file here, right? And there it is. Okay. Let's now turn this into a prefect pipeline. The way that we do this is in prefect there's this idea of a flow. All right? And that's you just use a decorator to turn your function into a flow. So flow just stands for a workflow. Okay? And a workflow has many tasks. Okay? So this workflow has two tasks. The first task is to find the receipts. So I will just put add task here. The second task is to write to CSV. And notice that you do have to call the workflow. Let me just prove that. If we comment this out, nothing is going to happen. Right? I don't have any data in here. Just like with normal Python, right? If you don't call your function, nothing is going to happen. You see that? Nothing's in here. Okay, so let's call it. And now we'll see something that happens. Okay, this is a little different. Created a flow run, and it gives you an example name, Ancient Swallow, for flow get and write data. So the flow is get and write data. That came from here, get and write data. Notice it's automatically turning my underscores into hyphens. It just does that. And then created a task run for find receipts. This worked, right? And it says executed it, and it worked. Then created another task run, write to CSV. So the find receipts is here, and then the write to CSV is here. So each of these, this is a flow, has many tasks, and then there's a flow run, which is the actual running of the code, and then a task run, right? Actually running these types of things. you can, you can see that this worked, but then the other thing is if we call prefect server, it doesn't work. Prefect server start. Okay. And now I can go to here. All right. So if I scroll down, you can see, well, here's the task runs. Let's click on flows. So this is the flow, right? Notice it says last run ancient swallow, right? This was the same thing I had here. This was the name of the flow run, right? So I can, like we said, a big thing, if we're scheduling these flows to occur and they're happening like overnight or something like that, you want to be able to walk in the next day and like see what occurred, especially because, things can always go wrong. So now we can click on that flow and we can say, see, this was this exact one. You can see I did this before class, right? This was 6:05 p.m. and I guess I did this like a couple weeks ago too. So now if I want to look more at the ancient swallow one, I probably should be able to click on this. And notice that it shows me these two things occurred, right? First find receipts, and then took the data from find receipts, passed it into write to CSV. And it's just showing me that this, successfully accomplished, all right? And that now the entire flow accomplished, right? So this is the task runs, and then here's the flow run, and that accomplished at that point in time. Again, right, you can look at the Flask runs, you can look at these individually. So this was the write to CSV one, right, and not too much here. You can log things, like, right, you can add more information if you want to, but we don't need to. Another thing that's pretty cool is I can log in. So this is now just locally on my computer, right? The same way Streamlit, right, was locally on my computer. I just booted this up, prefect server start, and then I can view this stuff. Now what's pretty cool is I can also log into Prefect itself, which I guess I can't do. Oh, prefect dot, is it IO? Yeah, there it is. Okay, so I'm going to log into Prefect. And now if I look at the flows, I see the same flow. Yeah, I think this was it, right? Extract and write. Was that it? Let's take a look. Oh, get and write data. It was this one. And let's take a look at the flow runs. This is something that I thought I deleted these. Let me see. There must be the, what was that name of that thing called? Ancient Swallow. Oh man. Flows. I'm just going to click on get and write data. I think it was this one. Get and write data. It should be this. It doesn't show. This should. I swear I tried this right before class. Find and write receipts. Extract and write. And this was get and write data. Get and write data. I think I just have too many of these. There's the one deployment. Anyway, these things, this will log to Prefect Cloud. All right, like I don't, I can look through this offline, but this will also log to Prefect Cloud, and it's not so hard. Let me, I'll stop recording for a second to show you. Don't worry, we go through this every time I run a course. I know that the memory does not last long. Okay. This is the terminal. All right, so kind of we have this code base. If you look at it, right, we have just remember we have the settings. These are settings, the client ID, client secret, right? This is from your Spotify account. So you'll have to register probably if you don't already have a Spotify account. And I just, Google like Spotify developer.spotify.com. And then from there, you probably have to register for an account, and then you can click on the dashboard. Then I have this, sorry, I'll go a little slower. Register for an account, click on your profile, click on the dashboard, and then from there, you probably have to create like different projects, I'm guessing. You see this create app, and then from there, you can click on settings, And then you can see here I have my client ID and my client secret, right? Client ID is like your username basically, and client secret is effectively like your password. So then, this is getting read obviously from my .m file. So these two have to line up, client ID, client secret. So that lines up over here, right? So I pasted this stuff in here. Now, where does this get used? Well, if you're curious, right, you can always just look like, where is client ID, and you can just search if you want, probably throughout the entire code base to see where it's used. So we've already seen these two right here. I define it. Here I import it. Spotify client.py. Let's click on this. So you can see that here we import from settings, and everything. Remember, everything has to have like the same starting point in terms of the folder, right? So these two things, these are coming from this Spotify library, but otherwise we're always going to start, it seems like, with this Spotify extractor, right? .settings. Here's .settings, and we're importing the client ID and client secret. Now that's getting passed through to this credentials manager. What is this? This is just a class, right? This is a class defined by this Spotify library thing, where we pass through the client ID and client secret, right? So these are my keyword arguments, and this comes from my settings.py. So this creates my credentials manager object. How do I know all this stuff? It's in the documentation. So if you just look up the Spotify library, what am I doing? I'm just basically, I found some sort of documentation where they show me what to do, right? Take this Spotify library and pass through this credentials manager thing. And then once you use it, then you can, now this Spotify library, once I've connected with my API keys, then you can call different methods with it. Okay, so these are all with the artists, but then there's probably something about a playlist, not that. User playlist, I'm not quite sure, but that will allow you to. So this is just This is just kind of an object that then gives you various methods for interacting with Spotify. Okay, that's the idea. This whole thing, this whole library, this fancy Spotify library, is just a wrapper around. You can imagine that the way it's built is it's a Python library that inside of it has import requests, and then it just knows about the requests.get, and then you get to make a request to these various endpoints, right, on Spotify. But its idea is to try to make it easier for you. So if you want to mess around with this thing, there's a couple things. One, you can see that you probably want to use it here. It probably, here's something to get the playlist tracks. And I think the instruction shows you how to do that. But then also, we have a console.py, right? So just remember, if you try to directly run, let's say we go to ETL, and we go into, Spotify extractor. And now we are okay, I want to mess around and see how does this, for example, Spotify client work. This is going to break, because remember, we're inside the Spotify extractor folder, and that means that from this folder's perspective, right, if we try to run Spotify client.py, it doesn't know about this folder, right? A way of kind of seeing that is if you do open dot, if you look at the finder, it's where do you see Spotify extractor? It's not in here. This is all Python sees, right? So it's not going to see this folder for you anymore. So if I run this, right, then I'm going to get Python 3. Let's just try to run Spotify client. It's going to break. Well, one, it says no module name Spotify. We can fix that pretty easily. But two, it will also ultimately complain about the Spotify extractor. Let's install some requirements so that way we don't get that error. So we'll just do, we'll go back here. We will, I still don't see my requirements.txt. There it is. Do Python 3 -m. So this is for the dash module, right? create a virtual environment. That's the Vem. And then this will create that folder, a folder called Vem, right? And now you see this. This is the folder called Vem. Inside that folder is another folder called bin. Let's actually go into it. Right, you can see this has another folder called bin, and then inside that folder called bin is a file called activate. This is just a file. See that? It's just a file. So what you need to do to activate your environment is run. Remember, source is just a bash command to run a specific file. So do source vem bin activate. This will activate your virtual environment. And then I can now run my pip3 install-r requirements.txt to install my various things. In this case, what's it really installing is this Spotify thing, but as well python.env, etc., etc. Okay, now let's finally try to just go back and run this script again. So we'll go to cd etl, that's fine, Spotify extractor. And now here, we're going to try to run this Python 3 client again, Spotify client. This again, we think will break because it has no idea what this is, because that's the folder we're inside of, and it can't, it doesn't see this. So you see that? No module name Spotify extractor. So what we need to do instead is we need to be in a file that can see this folder, right? We have to so this console.py can look downwards and see this folder. So now if I do python 3-i console.py, well, let's go to the console.py. Oops, sorry. Right, this should be okay. Because console.py, it can see this folder. And what I want to do is maybe interact with this client thing. So what can I do? I can say something like from Spotify extractor .Spotify client import start. And maybe let's just comment this out. We don't need that right now. So this will, import stuff from the listings adapter. There's not much there. It will then also import things from the Spotify client. When it goes there, now all of a sudden it can see this file, right? This module. Because we're doing it from the perspective of console.py, and console.py can see the Spotify extractor, whereas this is inside the folder, so it couldn't. And now I can do python 3-i to make this interactive, right? If I want to kind of mess around or play with the code, right? Then I use the interactive. This is taking a while. I don't know why. There it goes. Okay, so now we're importing all the functions from the Spotify client, and now I get to call build client. That will use the library to pass through my credentials and then return this Spotify object, right? This is just another kind of class that we're creating, and we're passing through my credentials. So let's call build client. Just remember, because I know it's been a while, if you just call this thing, yeah, but we need to hold on to this, right? So let's assign it to a variable. Now we have this client, and now we should get access to all the methods. So I just pressed tab 2 times, client dot, and then I just pressed tab 2 times. It says, do you want to display all the possibilities? I'm like, yes. So now one of those methods is playlist, I think. Is that the one we want, or is it something else? I can't remember.
Playlist items.
Thank you. Okay, playlist items. So we can do client.playlist items, and then probably pass through that. Let's take a look at it. This ID. So let's just assign this to a variable, playlist ID, and then we'll just do client.playlist items, and then pass through the playlist ID, and just see what we get back. We'll call this just whatever. I'll just call it my return, because I don't know what this is. Value. Okay, so it took a second, right? Which means it probably did make the request. Now let's take a look at what the return value is. Oh, and it's a bunch of stuff. How do we ever see this? So, what you probably want to do, what I like to do, is one, notice this is a dictionary, right? So what we should do is do like dot keys, right? Like let's see what's involved, what's inside this dictionary. There's various things. Total. What do you think that has? Probably has the total number of responses. Which of these do we probably want? Probably this one, the items. That's what I'm guessing. And now, what do we expect this to return? Like a list of dictionaries, I'm guessing. So here's my list, and this is a dictionary, right? So now we do our normal thing, where we try to just work with the first return value. And now this is probably pretty good. I don't know yet. Let's just sign this. I don't know what this is yet. It's called something. And again, let's do the same thing. It's a dictionary, right? You can see that by looking at the squiggly bracket at the end. And then just do dot keys again. Okay, now this is interesting. The playlist items probably has like the added by, meaning like probably the user who added it to the playlist and the time that it was added. I don't know what this means. Some sort of video thing. And then the track. So that's probably pretty good. So now I'll go to track. And then the same thing again. Look at the keys. And you can see here's the album, right? That the track is on, the artist, all this stuff, the ID, and the track number. And there's another track thing. So this starts to have probably like some good information here. Read the album type is single. Here's the artist. If we want to know that, here's the name, I'm guessing of the artist, right? Because this is a key, right? This is kind of the album. If you look at just like these are all the keys. So there's a key for album, and then there's album information. Then there's a key for artists. And I'm guessing there's like artist information down there. And then this is the total tracks. And then I'm guessing, let's just look at the track, right? Because there's another key for track. Oh, that's not so helpful, is it? But there's things like the ID, right? Which is probably the track ID. The name. Let's see what that is. Sorry. Okay. I do not know what that is. And other things. So like from there you can start to, this is one track in the playlist. So this is like you're gonna have to dig, right? Like any other API to get back the useful information, right? And then probably do this for one, like generate. What do you see? The track number is 1, which makes sense. Maybe this is of the playlist. Let's take a look. So it's like we need the track number. I think we need the the name of the song. I'm guessing we need the date time. The date time should be like today, because I'm guessing this is a playlist of the top 50 songs in the U.S. I think, or it might be in the globe. I forget. And we need that. We probably generate a different one every day. So, and let's just see. Like you can kind of explore. So this is something. That's the whole thing. And then we had prior to that we had return value. Let's just look at return value items 1. See, it's a little off, right? I would expect this to be 2, but instead it has a track number of 3. So I'm not sure. I think there's a key of index or something somewhere that has like what we want is like what's the ranking effectively of
It's popularity.
its popularity. Thanks.
I think so.
Items 1, and then let's take a look at this again. Keys added by track. Let's go to track. There you go. And there's popularity. All right. That's probably pretty good. Because the other one I think was 91. And then this one is 92. All right, so it's like we just out of all this mess, right? It's our job as engineers just to retrieve the relevant information. Okay, and then remember, of course, there are tests for this code base. So you can run. How do we run them? Well, PyTest, right? That will look for a folder called tests. You want to run it from here, right? Everything, because you want to run it from the context where you can see Spotify extractor. So when you go to the test folder, inside there, you kind of see how this works. This is saying from your listings adapter, I'm going to call this method get playlist tracks. So that should be defined in here, right? Takes the playlist ID, and then probably is going to use that build client function, I'm guessing, to create a client, and then call, what was that method again? Client dot like get playlist items or something like that. Oh, look at this. Something like that. I think the instructions have it. But anyway, if you go back to the tests are going to pass this through your method, confirm that there's 50 tracks coming back, and that, this is just what you get back from the API, from our library. Then we need to do our normal thing of, select the correct attributes. And that should be the track ID, which I saw in there. The ranking, the date is like today's date, which Python can generate for you. And the playlist ID, which is something we already have. Okay? And that's, like I said, this will take a little bit of work, like some real Python skills to do. But that's the steps, right, we can move through. All right. Cool. Well, I'm glad we're doing this.